All right, for some odd reason, that's not the music that I put in here, but that is the power of podcasting. For some odd reason, when I clicked on my music, it brought that up. And look, you're going to have these faux pas. I'm still trying to get used to everything. I've only been here for a week with the Red Line Radio Network, but welcome to another edition of For What It's Worth. I'm Ryan Neff, your host. All things politics. Before I bring him on, though, hopefully I won't screw this up. Hal Kempfer, ladies and gentlemen, at Hal Kempfer on the Tweeter machine, retired Marine Intelligence Officer, Lieutenant Colonel, CEO of GRIP, which stands for Global Risk Intelligence and Planning Incorporated. He is host of the STRAT podcast. Let's bring him on. There he is. That's Mr. Hal Kempfer. Hal, thanks for joining the program.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for having me on.
No problem. Let's just get into this here. We're 5 months into it, Hal. I watch you on live on Fox Live all the time. Where do I start? Militarily, strategically, what do these strikes, what is it supposed to do?
Well, we had that 14-point MOU. I wasn't a huge fan of some of the language in there. I felt we gave them way, way too much. But the other side of that was we were getting down to 30 days of oil reserves worldwide. And if some of those reserves had run dry, that would have been catastrophic economically. So we kind of had to do something to get the strait going to get some oil out, which we did. It didn't really work quite the way we hoped. The Iranians were reluctant to allow the strait to really open the way they said they were going to allow it to open, and they were still doing attacks on ships. And so that's kicked off this latest round of attacks. Most of the attacks have been on things that threaten commercial shipping, anti-ship missiles from Iran, drones, radars, coastal radars, all sorts of things they use for targeting purposes. Obviously going after those gunboats, those go-fast boats that they have in the strait and in and around the Persian Gulf. So, that's most of what it is. Although today they said some of the strikes are getting further into the country. So, and President Trump has notified Congress per the law that we have resumed kinetic activities. We've resumed combat operations. So that's what's going on. And of course, Iran responded the way they've always responded, which is they started attacking all the Gulf states, not just the Gulf states. They attacked Jordan, which is not on the Persian Gulf at all. And so they've been launching all these strikes in there, not to great effect, but they've been launching strikes. So they've essentially gone to war with all the Arab countries that are there. And so here we are. We're back at it again. One thing interesting, though, there was last Thursday, the U.S. stopped its strikes, and there were still airstrikes going on in Iran. And the question was, who's doing that? We said we'd stop. We haven't claimed it. We said publicly we told Israel do not do any strikes. And so I've never heard anything to say that was Israeli planes that were doing the strikes. I can't rule that out, but I don't think it was. But there's been a lot of speculation that those could have been from one or more of the Gulf states. UAE was specifically called out by Iran after that, saying they were supporting the U.S. Military operations. Could have been UAE planes, quite possibly. We have seen, in the past that Gulf states have, at least one or more have engaged in these strikes. So I don't rule that out, but no, I don't think anybody wants to say anything about it publicly. But we know who did it. Obviously, the country that was doing it knows who did it. The Iranians probably have a pretty good idea who did it. The Iranians don't want to admit that they've got these countries doing strikes there. Nobody else wants to admit they're doing the strikes there. And I just find this rather interesting. It's all being kind of kept a little bit quiet, but it was definitely to send a message to Tehran, which is it's more than just the U.S. that's going to hit you or is hitting you. So I found that
at this point, it almost seems like a game of chicken to me, Hal. It's, okay, U.S., if you're going to do this, we're going to block the Strait of Hormuz again. Okay, we're going to block Iranian ships from coming in and out. When does it stop? Because we've heard for months now it's going to stop. It's 2 weeks. Oh, and then it's another 2 weeks. Then it's a month. So the American people, to be quite honest with you, the people that I've talked to are kind of getting sick of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then President Trump comes out and says that the Iranian leaders are scum. He doesn't want to deal with them anymore. It's getting boring. So, I mean, what do you hear? I mean, you're in the thick of it, intelligence wise. You know, militarily, we can only keep it up so long. I'm sure everyone in the Middle East is going to get tired of it. When do you think this is going to come to an end? Because to me, it's just a game of chicken at this point.
I don't know when it'll come to an end, but there are some things that have kind of shifted, and there is a lot of analysis out there saying, you know, this is not what it was at the beginning. It's not what it was even a month ago in terms of where the Iranians are. They seem to think they have the upper hand. They really don't. One of the things, and one of the reasons the Iranians are doing these strikes is that the sea lanes, the transit lanes going through the Strait of Hormuz, have all shifted south away from Iranian waters. The two-way traffic that can replicate the amount of traffic that was going through the strait before this war began can all occur completely outside of Iranian waters. And for Iran, that's a real threat. You know, they like being able to control the Strait of Hormuz. It gives them leverage they didn't have before. But now all of a sudden, if you got ships that are not in their territorial waters, they can't do anything without basically doing an act of war, which is what they've been doing, attacking those ships. So that's a big change. That's a big shift that's taken place there. And I find that rather interesting. And obviously the Iranians aren't dealing with it. Now, as far as, you know, we're reimposing the blockade. That was just announced, the naval blockade. I was kind of expecting that. One of our great points of leverage, and one of the great points of leverage we have on the regime, is a naval blockade, because that really cuts off, you know, revenue, but it also cuts off resources and everything else that can go to Iran. So I was kind of waiting for that to take place. I said, unless something really amazing breaks loose, I think we're pretty much on the path to reimposing that blockade, and we are. So that's going back in place. Now, as far as President Trump saying we're going to charge 20% for cargo going through the strait, I have no idea. He said something like that earlier, and I thought all the lawyers that understood maritime law and international law had kind of pulled aside and said, "Boss, no, we can't do that, because that's the same thing we're telling them they can't do." And by the way, we're not even in that Gulf. I mean, we aren't even a country that's in there. So I don't know where he gets that from. I hope that somebody pulls him aside and he just drops that like he did before. But he said it again today, and it's like, you know, under the United Nations Convention of Law of the Sea, under maritime law, the whole, you know, international law, we don't have a leg to stand on where we can stand, you know, make a charge, you know, charge people cargo for going through an international sea lane. And we're supposed to be there to reimpose that as an international sea lane, so I just found that rather odd that he said that again, and I have no explanation for it.
Donald Kaler checking in. They said just level that place and be done. In my opinion, well, they're not going to do that. A little harsh, but
we don't actually. We you know, 20 we go, we're the most powerful military in the world, and it's like, okay, yeah, all right. That doesn't mean we have omnipotent power. All right, we can't go in and just level someplace. It just doesn't work that way. And by the way, our original intent was never to go to war against the people of Iran. Our intent was that we're going to help the people of Iran try to get rid of this autocratic, you know, whacked out regime. That was kind of our goal, was to do that. The Persian people, the Iranian people per se, they don't want this regime by and large any more than we do. That's why they were on the streets in January and December, and we saw what happened was, you know, the regime killed 40,000 Iranian protesters, 40,000 plus Iranian protesters out of desperation, because they realized that they lacked popular support. You know, so they did it the most draconian way I could possibly imagine.
Two more things on this. Is the IRGC making this more difficult? And then number two, why aren't the proxies getting more involved in this? Why haven't they have I not given the get-go?
Very good questions. IRGC is a pain. By the way, Britain today just announced that they see IRGC as a national security threat. They ramped it up in their system. which was long overdue. I felt they should have said that some time back. But yeah, the problem is they get these negotiators coming in. Look, Galaboff, the head of the Legislative Assembly, he's no moderate. He grew up in the Revolutionary Guard Corps. He was a general in the Revolutionary Guard Corps. Everybody like, these are more moderates, they're not military. It's like, no, he's pretty military. It's kind of like saying, a couple of our secretaries of defense that were 4-star generals. I'm like, yeah, they may be wearing a suit, but they still, and so anyway, so he comes in there. Aragshi, the foreign minister, comes in. Pezeshkian comes in. They keep acting like these are these more moderating forces and stuff. But I will tell you this is what's frustrating President Trump and everyone else. They agree to stuff at the table. They say, we're going to do this. They go back, and then this hardliner faction under the Revolutionary Guard Corps does whatever they want to do, which includes attacking ships or whatever. So it makes for this, very strange sort of situation where, they're kind of out there. Now, as far as the proxies, that's an issue. Hezbollah, you saw that ramp up this weekend. Israel's having to hit them. Israel and the government of Lebanon are on the same sheet of music. Got to get rid of Hezbollah. Got to disarm them. Got to, end their days as a military or paramilitary force. That's got to end. Iran says, no, we want to do this. We want to support Hezbollah. And the government of Lebanon is like, we're tired of Iran trying to impose its will onto our sovereign territory. This is Lebanese soil. And so they're working with the Israelis to deal with them. So they're trying to do stuff. Hamas, interestingly, has said that they're going to turn over, they're giving up governance of the Gaza Strip. Not that they really had a lot of control over it anyway, but they're giving up governance of the Gaza Strip. And they say, okay, so you're going to disarm? Yeah, we'll get back to you on that. And so they have not said they're going to disarm. So even though they're saying they're giving up governance, unless they are disarmed, nobody's going to come in and try to govern the place as long as there's armed Hamas guys running around. So, but it's a step. I don't know how big of a step, but it's a step in the right direction, kind of, sort of. The Houthis are threatening to attack ships. Again, they did an attack on a British ship not too long ago. The Saudis just went in there and hit the airport. And there was a Houthi delegation that was coming back to Yemen that was told they had to land someplace else and clear before they go back to the Houthi territories. One of the things that's happened, and it's been completely oblivious to everybody because everything else going on, is the two big factions of the Yemeni government that were kind of at war with each other have settled their differences. There's now a unified Yemeni government. They control 80% of the territory in Yemen. They're working in concert. They're working with the Saudis. And I think this is a really big change. Will this result in the Houthis being defeated? Not overnight, but it is definitely a big change that's going on. And I think these strikes on Sana'a Airport that the Houthis control, I think that's that's something to watch because I think it's going to be replicated in the future. Everyone's tired of the Houthis. Now, the Houthis are a little bit desperate right now because their main benefactor, Iran, can't do a whole lot for them. So they're kind of stuck. So, and I think as far as Saudi Arabia and as far as the government of Yemen is concerned, and as far as we're concerned, let's make the Houthis as stuck as possible. If we can make their life miserable, great. If we can make it extremely miserable, even better. And that's kind of our position on the Houthis. So
interesting. The main man from Red Line Radio here, Dave Wallachek, said, we're just talking a little, Middle Eastern stuff. The war, it's not really a war.
I think it's kind of a war, but okay.
Yeah, but the administration doesn't call it a war. Let's talk Ukraine, Russia a little bit. Look, we're 4.5 years in. I think Trump, much like Putin, thought we're just going to waltz in there. We're going to do what we got to do. It'll be over in a couple of weeks to a month, and everything will be over, and that's the end of it. At what point does maybe Putin's cabinet pull him aside and say, what's the price now? Is it worth it now? We're 4.5 years in. Zelensky's not going to back down. I know they've tried to have mediators in between there. It seemed to work a little bit at times, and then it just goes back right to the way it used to be. What are you hearing intelligence-wise as far as Ukraine and Russia? Do you see any end in sight at this point?
Well, I see we are at a strategic inflection point, if I could use that, famous term, in that the Russian economy is nosediving fast. They can't afford the war. The head of their central bank has told Putin publicly, said we cannot afford the war. Period. We can't. And the Ukrainians, after many years of trying a lot of things, have found something that seems to work. First off, their production numbers of drones and cruise missiles have come online, so they can produce enough of these things, and they're doing these deep strikes. And so they've done these deep strikes all over, to include in Siberia, hitting an oil refinery out there. And they have cut back their refining of gasoline, for example, by almost 50% across the country. If you go to Moscow, there's long lines of people waiting to get gas. It's extremely expensive. If you're a civilian in Crimea, Russian-occupied Crimea, a gallon of gas will cost you $25 a gallon if you can get it. All right. So it's having a tremendous effect. The other thing they've done is they've really cut off the supply lines to the frontline troops. They have interdicted this intermediate range thing where they've interdicted the logistics, the command and control, all this stuff. So the Ukrainians are very much on the move. They're gaining more territory than losing. That's been true for a couple, 3 months now. So that's a big shift. Putin is stuck with maybe trying to mobilize the Russian, do a mass mobilization. But if he does that, that could very well trigger everything that would get him overthrown. It's not going to be his cabinet. His cabinet is blind loyalists. And if anybody had ever looked at him askance, they tended to go near a high floor window and hit terminal velocity very quickly, if you know what I mean. So he's been weeding out anybody who was in a position that could do something over the years. But amongst the oligarchs, amongst the business elites and others, they're looking at this going, there's no way out of this. They've looked at it and said, Russia is not going to prevail. Russia is not going to win. We've lost over 500,000 Russian troops killed, almost 1.5 million total casualties. And for what? And by the way, Russian losses are 8 times greater than the Ukrainian losses. Yeah, they're 3 times larger than, Russia's 3 times larger than Ukraine, but do the math, 8 times more losses. That doesn't quite equate. So basically, bad tactics, bad training, bad equipment, bad logistics, bad leadership, everything with the Russian army. The Ukrainians are only getting better. And now Europe has just signed an agreement with Ukraine on ballistic missiles. That's a big problem. They ran out of Patriot missiles. We have used up our Patriot missiles. We're trying to recharge our Patriot stockpiles as well. So now we just signed this. We just had this agreement where they're going to try and produce their own missiles that they can fire from Patriot missile systems. But ballistic missile defense is a huge problem for Ukraine. It's a huge problem for Europe. And so now they're working together, which I think is really smart. And Europe has really looked at Ukraine. They say, hey, look, this war in Ukraine is vital to the long-term security of Europe. And one thing, and it's interesting, Lindsey Graham just passed away suddenly. But one of the things Lindsey Graham had told President Zelensky way back when, he says, look, you've basically destroyed about a half of the Russian army. And we haven't lost one soldier, one American service member to destroy half the Russian army. We just give you support and you go out there and destroy them. And Zelensky's picked that up, and he uses that in a lot of different places to include across Europe. And he says, hey, look, you send stuff to us, we'll do the fighting. You just give us the ammunition and everything else we need, and we'll deal with your threat. Because when you look at the threat to Europe, what's the big threat to Europe? It's Russia. That's pretty much it. China is not going to be invading Europe anytime soon. I'm telling you. It's a geography on that one. So, yeah.
Segue one last thing, and I'll let you go because I know you're busy. China. It's almost like they're sitting back and saying, you all do what you're doing, and we're just going to sit back and kick back and We're not going to really say too much because it's really none of our business up to a point.
Mhm.
But y'all just keep what you're doing, and we're just going to continue to go about our business.
They're kind of true, although they're machinations behind the scenes. Are they providing support for Russia? Yes. Are they supporting Iran? Yes. Are they making money providing that support? You bet. Are they doing all these little things in the background to undermine the U.S. position? Yes, absolutely. Are they an adversary of the U.S. and Europe and elsewhere? Yes, absolutely, they are. But they're looking at this right now and they go, we got to get past this because this could have serious detrimental effects to the Chinese economy. And the economy already has a lot of serious effects from what's been going on before. And I think they're afraid of hitting that tipping point where the Chinese economy starts to fall apart. And they're trying to avoid that at any cost.
Donald Kaler checking in again, saying it's a waste of a lot of money for everyone and a lot of loss of life on every side. It's not worth. Well, no war is worth it, to be quite honest with you. It doesn't. Nothing is worth war unless it's really worth fighting for. A lot of people think that this is just the Epstein files. Hal. That's all I keep hearing.
I've heard that. I've heard that too. It's like the biggest diversion program or diversionary program of all time, which is to get everybody looking somewhere else. And
then
it's kind of worked if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, so.
And Trump coming out again today. I think he was on Fox stating that this is all Obama's fault. The whole Middle East thing, it's all Obama's fault. And I just wish, Hal, I know you got to be neutral on stuff, but I just wish the man would stop blaming everybody else on what's going on with Ukraine and Russia and in the Middle East. He just always seems to blame everybody else. And he's going to be this, a savior, so to speak, that he's just going to come in and stop everything.
I'm going to be very neutral on this. It's Lyndon B. Johnson. That's the problem. Okay.
That's what it is. Yes,
that's the problem.
The man really has the man has a sense of humor, ladies.
And I'm going to tell you, yeah, Harding. I haven't forgotten that term.
Oh my God, I love having him on. It's the second time he's been on. Thanks for the time, Hal. I know you're busy. You're gonna be busy. Anytime you want to come back on, I'll reach back out to you to come back on, man.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. Great being on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Hal. Hal Kemper, ladies and gentlemen. I was going to ask him about the Kelsey Swift wedding, but he has made it known that he is really not an expert on the whole Madison Square Garden wedding, which I would never do that to him anyway. So, but again, we are in month 5 of the, I guess you want to call it the U.S.-Israel-Iran war. I don't know. They're just going to start lumping everybody in the Middle East. It's going to be Syria, Saudi Arabia. Everybody's going to start getting lumped into it. Like Hal said, I'm still waiting for the proxies to ramp it up. If anything, Hezbollah is still a huge threat. I know some of their capabilities have been weakened, but they've just sort of been sitting back, although they've ramped it up, like Hal said. And the Houthis, and then some of the others. And you might even have some rogues out there. You're going to get some rogues out there somewhere that are going to take it upon themselves to not affiliate with themselves with anybody. And I wouldn't be too surprised if that happens. I'm going to end it there because my brain is fried, ladies and gentlemen. With all that's going on in the political world right now, I really don't have the energy to talk about anything else. Yes, rest in peace, Lindsey Graham. And there's just some other stuff going on behind the scenes right now. I would like to delve into, but I want to gather some more information and come up with a solid opinion. So I'm going to end it there. Do I even dare try to play my music for the outro? Let's see. It's probably going to do the same thing. Let me just. Line by line, say your pain. Don't dress it on. But that's going to do it for this episode of For What It's Worth. I'll be back next week. Coming up 8 o'clock here on the Red Line Radio Network. Early evening sports buffet with the game, Sean McGinn. So that was a high school nickname. We'll get into the World Cup action. Major League Baseball, it's break. We're in the All-Star break. Guess what? A couple weeks, NFL camps will open up. Still media days for college football. We'll get into all that. I see Al giving a thumbs up. Al, if you ever want to come back on and talk sports, and ditch all this political stuff, you can come back on and talk sports. So I'm out of here. I'll see everybody at 8 o'clock here on the Red Line Radio Network. I'll see everybody at
Red Line Network introduces our newest partnership, Outlaw Light. Outlaw is crafted for all of the beer drinking patrons of America. They aren't reaching or teaching, their mission plain and simple, to provide a high quality beer at an affordable price. Outlaw is crisp, crushable, refreshing. Available by the case, tall boys, 16-ounce 6-packs or singles. Go to outlawbeer.com to find the nearest can or tavern near you. The Red Line Network proudly raises their cans to you. Stay bold, Outlaw.